Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. And bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. You're rich in love and you're slow to anger. Your name is great and Your heart is kind. For all Your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing Your praises unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. I worship Your holy name. Worship Your holy name. I worship Your holy name.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. And I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see so clearly. And hallelujah, grace like a rain falls down on me. And hallelujah, and all my stains are washed away. They're washed away. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieve. How precious and dear that grace appeared the hour I first believed. Hallelujah, grace like rain falls down on me. And hallelujah, and all my stains are washed away. They're washed away. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less than days to sing your praise than when we first began. Hallelujah, grace like rain falls down on me. And hallelujah, and all my stains are washed away. Hallelujah, grace like rain falls down on me. And hallelujah, and all my stains are washed away. They're washed away. And hallelujah, and all my stains are washed away. They're washed away.
We're all falling and we need a place to hide. A safe place somewhere in the woods we can start a fire. All we know is what will be our home. We will stay until the break of dawn. The cold night takes us to a place to escape the chill. somewhere in the woods on a hill. Wake up feeling the cold in between our toes. Is there a way back? Nobody knows. And we leave it all behind. Can't you see? We need some time. And we all sit around the fire. We feel a little warmer now. And we all sit around the fire. We feel so much better now.
Well, hello, and a very good morning to all ye seafaring wayfarers who have dropped anchor in harbour today. A very good welcome and a good morning to you all. I'm sure it's a bit like Groundhog Week. You're sure your week this week has been the same as every other week for the last 4 or 5. There is light at the end of the tunnel, as we have been seeing. Something like 20, or is it coming closer to 30 million people in the UK have received their vaccinations. And that includes, well, not in the UK, but the wonderful Dolly Parton has had her vaccination.
I even changed one of my songs to fit the occasion. It goes, vaccine, 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 vaccine. I'm begging of you, please don't hesitate. Vaccine, 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 vaccine. 'Cause once you're dead, then that's a bit too late.
So Dolly Parton encouraging everyone to go out there and get their vaccine as soon as you can. If you've had yours, good on you. I'm still waiting because I'm young enough, so my turn will come soon. But we are getting there slowly but surely. If you're wondering when services are going to return to the premises that we have in Governor's Place in Carrick, we're not there yet, so we are keeping a close eye on things, and it's unlikely to be this side of Easter. That's for sure. But we are making progress, and we will keep a close eye on the situation and let you know when things are going to change. In the meantime, we will continue to live stream and engage on a virtual basis. And just to let you know, if you're part of the wider Friends of Harbour network, or you are geographically dispersed part of this community, even if we do end up going back to our building, or when we end up going back to the building, we'll make sure that we have a virtual presence to keep everyone connected and that we don't leave anyone behind. So we keep going, and we keep our spirits high. So we have an opening song today, and this opening song, genre of it may not be to everybody's taste, but I am sure we can all identify with the sentiments expressed.
Oh my Lord, please don't forsake me. This is your child, I'm tired and sore. Oh my Lord,
So I think we can all identify just with the call from the heart there that just needs a place to rest, and that just wonders if God is even hearing us, and puts that all on the line and asks that question, just like the Psalms do again and again, with their laments and their grievances and their joys, all put out there with full honesty and authenticity, because it's how we feel. So if you're just joining us now on the live stream, very welcome to you. A quick technical note: some people have been saying they can't see all the comments in the live chat. Sometimes your live chat settings might be set to top chat, I think it's called, which just for some reason decides which chats to show you and which not to. If you just change that setting to all chat or live chat, I think it should show you everything. So there's two settings. If you've got it set the right way, you should see everything people are putting in. If not, I don't know what else is wrong with it, but that's my best guess for now. A special welcome to Cherith and Mark. Cherith and Mark both emailed in earlier in the week to say they've recently connected with us on the live stream. Cherith is originally from Scarva, but now lives in England with her husband, Mark. And just want to read you a little something that Mark has said. He says, Cherith and I have both been looking for a church that models open table ministry, that embodies the Father's all-inclusive love. We've been so thrilled to find HFC. It's the closest thing to kingdom kindness we've seen, and it has felt like a homecoming. First of all, HFC, that abbreviation, I like it. I think we need to throw it in a bit more often. And secondly, it's just wonderful to be able to provide a homecoming for people as we go forward. And just to say to all of you, there would be no community for people to be drawn to if you weren't a part of this, if you weren't giving your time, your attention, and your attentiveness to what's happening here, and your presence to what's happening here. We are a community of people, many of whom have been hurt before, who have been disillusioned before, who have been who have found ourselves on the margins of church life before, and we are gathered together, determined to make sure that we are a community that doesn't make people feel that way ever again. And so we are finding our feet. We are finding an inclusive, thoughtful, kind, generous, open, affirming faith that is doing all of us a world of good. And we're so glad that more and more people are discovering this community and are throwing their weight behind it, being supportive and benefiting from it. So it's a wonderful thing that we're all doing together. And for me, it's an absolute privilege to be curating this movement on all of our behalves. So I want to read you a little something from Micah chapter 4, because there's been a lot of speculation. You see books written. You see all these poems and speculations about what heaven is like, the clouds and the angels on the harps and the streets of gold and all this, imagining, or as some would say, we can't even imagine, what heaven is going to be like. Of course, the Gospels and the New Testament and the Bible as a whole doesn't really even speculate, doesn't go into it. But in the words of the prophets, you do find something of an outline of what an expectation of a future where God is in charge might look like. And so Micah 4, you get this message. In the last days. So here we go. If you want to know what the end is going to be like, Micah has laid it out for us a long time ago. In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established as the highest of the mountains. It will be exalted above the hills, and people will stream to it. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, right? In other words, they will melt down their weapons of warfare and instead make weapons or tools of agriculture. They will give up their fields, or they'll give up their fighting for fields and farming. Nation will not take up sword against nation, so there'll be peace, nor will they train for war anymore. They won't even prepare to fight. Okay, that's the vision of the future. And then listen to this. Everyone will sit under their own vine and under their own fig tree, and no one will make them afraid, for the Lord Almighty has spoken. So the vision of the future coming from Micah, heaven, if you like, this vision of heaven, is a very, very simple an earthy one. It's a vision where people are content with what they have. We don't prepare for battle. We don't fight. We farm. We till the land. Everyone has their own vine and their own fig tree. Not 10 fig trees or 20 vines, right? Everyone's just got their own and are content with it. And because of that, no one makes them afraid. What would you have to be afraid of? And so there's this wonderfully simple, idyllic, if you like, vision of the future where people just have their own plot of land, their own form of sustenance, and greed doesn't infect it, and there's no fear of conflict. And what a simple, open, ordinary, and yet compelling view of heaven that's been under our noses this whole time. And so when we think of the future and what heaven might be like, we must keep that vision front and center. And anything we see today that isn't leading there, or that is damaging that or defacing that image, that's causing conflict or exclusion or taking fig trees and vineyards away from people so that others can have 1,000 fig trees, right? Where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Anything that's breaking that vision is coming against the kingdom of God. And there was a certain group of people who, when they saw that happening, they would challenge the authorities, and they were called prophets. And they would look at what was going on and they would say, this isn't right. You're not treating widows right. You're not treating foreigners right. You are excluding people from accessing economic wealth, from having basics like food and sustenance and shelter. And so the prophets like Jeremiah and Micah, we've just read here, would challenge continually when they saw this vision of the future not being realized, or an alternate vision being built under their noses. And that's part of our role as people of God, is to be prophetic. And so speaking of being prophetic and keeping an eye on when things aren't coming together in that vision of the future that Micah gives us, I want to invite you to give Kelly Turtle, who I would call a prophet for today's time. I want you to give her 5 minutes of your time as she reflects on a significant day tomorrow.
Morning. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to talk about the fact that tomorrow, Monday the 8th of March, is International Women's Day. I wanted to talk a little bit about what International Women's Day means to me. I've been involved in gender justice and been really passionate about that work for a long time, since I was pretty young. So for me, International Women's Day is a focal point in my year for all of that work of gender justice. It's about celebrating how far we've come, because we have achieved so much in terms of closing that equality gap between men and women, and also just transforming the conditions of women's lives, both here locally and all around the world. It's also a time to rally for all the work that still needs to be done, and there is plenty of work that still needs to be done. And it's also a time, now more than ever, for building solidarity across our different movements for social justice, so we can link up with campaigns for racial justice, for LGBT rights, for disability rights, and we can work together to fight all those systems of oppression. So what does it look like in Northern Ireland? Well, you can celebrate International Women's Day, you can mark International Women's Day in any way that means something to you. But certainly in Northern Ireland, the grassroots women's movement and feminist movement is pretty radical in how we go about it. For just over 10 years, we've had a group called Reclaim the Agenda that organises a whole series of events that brings the movement together, from community-based women's centres to campaign groups to the workers movement, trade unions, the student movement. Everybody comes together for a huge rally at the City Hall and a whole series of events to look at some of the issues that women are still fighting for. So we're pretty radical. We believe in basing International Women's Day on the roots of the movement, which it actually originated just over 100 years ago with women who were part of the workers movement, particularly women in textile factories in America and New York. There were some horrific fires where lots of women lost their lives because they were working in really unsafe conditions. And so International Women's Day started with a series of strike action. So we're really true to that here in Belfast in how we celebrate it. We really highlight the impact of inequality on women who suffer the worst impact of that because of other inequalities, particularly economic inequality. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we would look at. Now we do always have a physical rally, as I said, but this year, obviously, we had to have it online. But it was absolutely fabulous. It took place yesterday on Saturday, and we're going to have more events all throughout the week, so you can join in with those if you're interested. But some of the issues we looked at were things like violence against women, which we still know is unfortunately extremely common. 1 in 3 women around the world will experience some form of gender-based violence, that is violence that's perpetrated against her purely on the basis of her gender. And during the pandemic, that has been exacerbated. The message stay home, stay safe has not been true for many women who've been experiencing domestic abuse. Another issue we looked at is inequality in the workplace. And so many women still face discrimination around pregnancy and maternity rights. And again, the pandemic has worsened that. Women have been leaving the workforce at an alarming rate because there are still so many stereotypes and gender roles that we have in society, in our families, in the workplace. And the caring responsibilities that have been going on during the pandemic have largely fallen to women. I know it's not like that in every home, but across the board, the research is really clear. That's still the pattern, and we have to deal with that. There has to be more support. And so that's the kind of stuff we've been looking at over the last week in the women's movement and asking people to get involved in. People will often say to me around International Women's Day, what can I do to help if I've never been involved in this type of work before? How can I do something active? Well, for me, I think there's 3 things. The first one is listen. Really listen to the voices of women around you. If you're a woman yourself, go out of your way to listen to women who are different to you, who have maybe had different experiences or had different barriers to overcome. So listen as much as you can and learn. That's the second one. We have to really be open to having our own perceptions challenged, our own stereotypes challenged, and to come away from our engagements with women's issues changed a little bit. And then the last one is amplify. So once you've heard those stories, once you've taken on board what it is, we can see a little differently about the world. Use your voice then to amplify those campaigns and stories and ways that women are speaking out and trying to challenge things. I have to finish by saying it's fantastic to be a part of Harbour, a place where probably for the first time in my whole faith journey, I feel like I'm in a faith community where feminism matters, gender justice matters, a church that doesn't hesitate to look for new voices in scripture, new perspectives in scripture, look at women's perspectives. And after Brian's fantastic sermon a couple of months ago based on the Magnificat, I went out and bought one of these t-shirts. So this is my International Women's Day official t-shirt 2021 is Mary, Radical Mary, saying cast down the mighty, send the rich away. Happy International Women's Day everybody, and do everything you can during this time to listen, learn and amplify. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Thanks for taking the time just to send that to us. And I hope we can all take that encouragement on board. This is what it means to look at our society and ask the question, is this leading towards everybody having enough and everyone being treated equally? And that's just a simple vision of heaven. It's all we really need. Micah sums it up by saying, look, just walk humbly, love justice, walk humbly with your God. That's all you have to do. And Kelly has a strong voice reminding us to do that. And so speaking of prophetic voices, and another reason I wanted to read that bit in Micah was the way it ended with that, just this wonderful line, no one will make them afraid. You think about all the things that make you afraid, all the things you worry about, the things that keep you up at night, despite all your best efforts, no matter how much money you save or how hard you try, there always seems to be something that infiltrates our peace and disrupts our peace of mind, causes our spirits to become anxious. And the word for that is really fear. It comes in many forms, and things do now make us afraid. And so that promise that this simple way of living, where everyone just is treated as equals and everyone has enough and no one takes too much, can lead to a place where fear is a thing of the past, right? Where there's no one making us afraid. And one of the new voices speaking into that area is our very own Gareth Higgins. I call him our very own. We don't really own him, but I should like to call him that for now. You'll know his husband, Brian, who's been on a few times speaking. Gareth, obviously, is his better half. And he has just written a book, which is coming out in April, although you can pre-order it now. And it's on that very subject. It's actually called How Not to Be Afraid. So technically, you could say it's a book about heaven. And here's a little preview.
You know, sometimes we're just lost. We experience so much fear in the world and in our daily lives. And we've been taught there's only 3 ways to respond: to fight back, to run away, or to freeze in place and maybe even scrunch up our eyes so the monster doesn't get us. I'm sure you've had your share of fear. I have too. I grew up in a society that was so politically polarized that we actually turned to violence against each other, and untold suffering was caused. At the same time, there was a shadow side to religion that taught many of us to reject ourselves or even hate ourselves. I've got good news. That's just a story. The beliefs we hold about fear and the beliefs we hold about ourselves are just stories. And if you're willing to take a risk and experiment with the possibility that there might be a better story, I think you might find this good news too. We can turn the oppositional energy of fighting against fear into the energy of activism in community for the common good. You can turn the energy of running away from fear into the energy of turning to face your fears and maybe not overcome them, but at least get bigger than the things that you're afraid of. And instead of freezing in place, there's a story and a way of being that can melt what freezes us, connect us with each other, and show us that the idea that we're not alone isn't just a nice cliched or poetic thought. It's actually true. My hope in this book is that together we can learn more of this better story and turn our fear into excitement. My name's Gareth Higgins, and this is How Not to Be Afraid.
So our very own Gareth Higgins with Brian and friends standing around a campfire in the snow for some reason in what looks to be Smallville with the barn in the background, talking about his book. Gareth came and spoke at Harbour, or what was then Gateway. Many years ago, we heard he was this interesting and challenging voice kind of on the margins of church, and we really wanted to hear what he was saying. And all these years later, he's kept going, kept being that strong, powerful, provocative voice. And a lot of that has been distilled now into this book that he's brought out. So you can pre-order it now, and it's out 13th of April. You remember last week we had Philip reading a poem from his book, which had just come out. Gareth will actually be reading a section of his book for us on the live stream, either next week or the week after. So we look forward to that. It seems like a lot of people have used lockdown very productively to write books. You may or may not know that Roy Pritchard, also part of this community, is in the process of bringing out a book. Everyone's been very diligent and put their time to good use. I, on the other hand, have used lockdown really just to learn how to do this. And yes, that is me standing doing the roots of my wife's hair. My wife's hair being that, what can only be described as a bracken thicket patch down, but no, I'm only joking. That's it fluffed up, ready for doing the roots. I should back off now, really. But yeah, I learned that skill during lockdown, and I hope to put it to good use going forward. But I'm very excited that other people have done things more productive, like write books or learn a new language. Enough said about all that. We move now to Grace and Peace. And so hold your horses. This is our Grace and Peace hymnal, where we say grace and peace to each other and listen to an older song or hymn. This one's really old. It goes right the way back to the 1800s. And you may or may not recognize it, but I love it. So as we listen to it, let's say grace and peace to each other.
What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alone. Leaning, leaning on the everlasting arm. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning and leaning, safe and secure from all alarm. Leaning and leaning on the everlasting arm. What have I to dread? What have I to fear? Leaning on the everlasting arms. I have blessed peace with my Lord so near, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning and leaning, safe and secure from all alarm. Leaning and leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning and leaning, safe and secure from all alarm. Leaning and leaning on the everlasting arms.
So that hymn there, also a challenge and an encouragement to reset where it is we get our hope, our security, our sense of safety from. Because everywhere else we try, wherever we try to put stock in the economy or the world around us, there always seems to be some kind of letdown. And it's finding refuge in the everlasting arms that Micah is talking about. And that's a practical thing to do. We can actually take steps towards doing that. One of the ways is activism, the sort of thing that Kelly was challenging us about, pushing forward and challenging bits of our society that don't meet or conform to that vision of that heavenly future of peace and safety and security. Another way is to confront our own selves, right? Our own hearts, our own inner being, where sometimes the damage that's done there inevitably finds its way out and finds expression in us finding ways to harm each other or to harm ourselves even. And so when years of doubts or struggles or disappointments or anxieties or fears start to build up, internally we've got to deal with that too. And the scriptures always invite us to do that. One of the ways is lament. So we just express that which is frustrating us openly and honestly and authentically to God without being afraid of offending God and just saying, this is what's happening, God, and it is not okay. And the Psalms do that as well. They are full of that. And you also see the counterpoint of that, the counterbalance, where psalmists will write about the glory and the wonder of God, specifically to do with creation and the wonder of the heavens and the sun and the stars and the moon and all that they see, all that they perceived to be outward expressions of the living God. And so Psalms like Psalm 19 really help us to reset our internal compasses, to fixate again on the source of all, and most importantly, the source of love. And as our hearts are warmed again towards love and kindness, then that finds its way out. That finds a way to express itself outwardly from us too. And so I asked Alex Crow, would she read us the psalm for today, which comes from Psalm 19. And the last line, or the last second to last line, is really important too. So just listen to it. And after she finishes reading it, there'll be some music on, and that's just a moment for you personally, where you are, to offer to God anything that's internal, that's been internalized for you, that you just need God to work with, to help grow, to nourish. If it's fears that need to be pushed back, if it's love that needs to be called out, if it's disappointments you just need to acknowledge, if it's faults you need to confess, this is your moment to do that. So the psalm leads into that moment of self-reflection, of contemplation, and of reaching towards God. The surprise being that God isn't really very far anyway, and is certainly not out there. Even though we might look out there to discover God, really we find God within. And so here's Alex leading us with that reading.
The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims God's handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There is no speech, nor other words. Their voice is not heard, yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In the heavens God has set a tent for the sun, whose rising is from the end of the heavens, and its circuit to the end of them, and nothing is hidden from its heat. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The decrees of the Lord are sure, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is clear, enlightening the eye. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The ordinances of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, even much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and drippings of the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is your servant warned. In keeping them there is great reward. But who can detect their errors? May God clear me from hidden faults. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer.
Holy, holy, holy Lord, God of power and might, heaven and earth are filled with your glory. your glory.
So last week, the gospel reading was a story about Jesus basically dropping a bombshell on his followers when he began to teach them that he was going to head to Jerusalem and that there he would confront or be confronted by the religious authorities, and that he would have to suffer and actually die, give his life for this project, this movement that he was inaugurating. The disciples don't like this, especially Peter, who challenges Jesus and says, no way, this is a crazy move. But Jesus is resolute and sets his face to Jerusalem and strides on. And the passage today kind of tells a story of what happens when it gets there. And you can see exactly why from the story Jesus says that he's going to be challenged and run into conflict in Jerusalem. The version of this story is in a few of the Gospels, but the version today comes from John chapter 2. So quite early in John's Gospel, probably because John tends to play around with the chronology a bit in the Gospel teachings. But anyway, here's what happens, read to us by Niamh Kenny.
A reading from John's Gospel, chapter 2. The Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple he found people selling cattle, sheep and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. Making a whip of cords, he drove all of them out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. He also poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. He told those who were selling the doves, "Take these things out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." The Jews then said to him, "What sign can you show us for doing this?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews then said, "This temple has been under construction for 46 years, and will you raise it up in 3 days?" But he was speaking of the temple of his body. After he was raised from the dead, the disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scripture and the word that Jesus had spoken.
So this is one of the iconic images of Jesus, going into the temple courts, flipping the tables, chasing out the money lenders, and generally creating havoc. In Mark's version, Jesus does this and then actually stops trade happening. He wouldn't let anyone bring anything into the temple courts at all. He institutes a kind of an embargo on buying and selling in the temple courts. So just a bit of background. Passover is a time, as we know, that the population of Jerusalem, particularly around the temple area, would swell to hundreds of thousands of people, because you had Jewish people who were scattered across the diaspora who would come back, people from other nations as well who would pay their respects at the temple. It was just that really, really religious time of year where everyone was making their pilgrimage. And when you went to the temple, one of the reasons for going was to make sacrifice. And to make sacrifice, well, you needed to have animals, whether it was a dove or some other kind of animal, and those were made available to you. So they were made for sale. But of course, you couldn't spend your foreign currency, so there were money changers as well. So if you wanted to make sacrifice to pay your respects sometimes, which was what it was for foreign dignitaries, would come and just, pay homage to the culture that they are in. For others, it was really a religious, pious thing that they were doing. But in any case, you ended up with this whole, in fact, what Jesus calls it, a marketplace. And at every stage, with the changing of money, with the buying of cattle or animals that were then to be sacrificed, with all of that, people were making money. People were taking their cut, and trade was happening. And that's what trade does. The whole point of trading is to try and trade up. And this is happening on the temple grounds. Now remember, the temple was meant to be the physical manifestation of the dwelling place of God on earth. Right? That's how it was seen. And the way it was constructed, as most of us probably know, but here's a quick recap, was in a series of courts. And so you had your outer courts, where like anybody could go, whatever nationality you were. You had your inner courts, which were just for ethnic Jews. Then smaller and smaller, where they were just the men, and then smaller, where they were just the Levites or the priestly figures, and that's the holy place. And then you get the Holy of Holies, which was this basically small room right at the center, separated by this curtain or veil, where only the high priest could go in, and then only once a year, so we're told. And so the temple is set up as this these concentric courts that get more and more exclusionary the closer you get to God, right? Now you can see that this very setup is troublesome from the perspective of a rabbi, a prophetic rabbi, who is teaching that God is way more expansive and inclusive than that. Remember, Jesus spent much of his teaching and preaching breaking down those boundaries. You hate Samaritans? Well, here's a story about Samaritans being the hero, right? You think Gentiles are to be excluded? Well, here's me healing Gentiles and Roman soldiers. Here's me helping Roman centurions out. You think women are to be ignored and pushed to the margins? Well, here's me giving women my full attention, right? So Jesus is all those barriers he's constantly breaking down, making the point that God is way more accessible than we have thought, right? And to really get this soaked into our being, we have to do something called repenting. That's what Jesus said. We've got to repent because the kingdom of God is at hand. And that just means reforming, basically, right? Resetting what we think we know about God. So anyway, he comes to Jerusalem, and here's this temple, which has this exclusionary image. And not only that, the courts are now full of trading. So that means that this representation of God, not only is it difficult from Jesus' point of view, right? But actually, it's become dependent now on the economic situation around it, right? The very economics of Jerusalem, people's livelihoods and businesses and the money they made was dependent on this setup of courts and exclusionary tactics. It was now a religious industrial complex where there was money to be made. And so now you're not just challenging a vision of God, you have to take down the economics that have begun to surround that vision of God, right? And we have this similar problem today when you have religious institutions, particularly churches, that become increasingly powerful and wealthy and hold sway in government and so on. When you challenge perceptions of God, you are also challenging all of that as well. And a lot of people stand to lose. And so when Jesus starts turfing people out, he's making a prophetic point that this is not how we get to Micah 4, right? Is what remember Micah 4? In the end days, everybody comes and is together and has free and equal access, right? And everyone has enough at the Temple Mount, which is where he was physically standing. Well, that's never going to happen if this temple, this expression of God as having all these layers to get close to God is underpinned and solidified around this economic system of a marketplace. This has to change. And you can see why this pulls Jesus into conflict with the people around him, particularly religious leaders who are responsible for keeping this whole temple industrial complex going. Now, the reason that Jesus is so incensed by this, the reason Jesus is really so intent on pursuing this new vision of God, right, and helping people see God the way that we needed to see God, right, in order for our salvation even, is explained to us in some way by an old friend, Pete Rollins.
One of the fundamental problems we have is from when we're born, as soon as we're self-conscious, conscious of ourselves, we realize that we are separated from something. As soon as there's a me, there's a you. As soon as there's an I, there's a thou. So at a very, very fundamental level, we experience separation at the very core of our being. And what we then do is we then imagine something that will fill that separation. And one of the things that, for example, a child might want a puppy. They feel that, if they had a puppy, they'd be happier. But there's another element that comes into play. Let's imagine that the parents say, no, you can't have the puppy. The child will continue often to want the puppy. And the more they say no, the more the child's going to want the puppy, until the puppy becomes something that they think will satisfy them, will make them whole, to the point they're saying, you'll never have to buy me any presents anymore, I'll feed him every day, I'll walk the dog every day, right? Now, in theological language, that sense of separation can be called original sin, which simply means a sense of separation at the core of our being. And the prohibition is called the law, that thing which says you can't have something, which actually generates its very opposite, makes us want what we can't have. And so that creates the idol. The idol is an object that we think will make us whole or complete. So anything that you think will make you whole and complete is an idol, whether it's God or a car or a person. On the crucifixion, we see the temple curtain is ripped in two. The temple curtain is like the law. It's that thing which separates us from the Holy of Holies, that thing that we think will make us whole and complete. And when the temple curtain is ripped in two, we discover the truth. There's nothing in there. There's no god gas. There's nothing, no wizard. It's just empty. We realize that the God who is behind the law, the thing that we think will make us happy and complete, is nothing. And then we discover something much more deep and much more interesting. That God then is not found behind this curtain. God is found in the embrace of the world, not in seeking God out there, but rather as the ground of our being. That's why the crucifixion is so interesting to me, is that we are being invited to participate in that experience of the loss of the thing that we think will make us complete, which you hear in the crucifixion when Christ cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The temple curtain is ripped in two. We die and we rise up different. We're now God as where two or three are gathered together. God is where we love. God is where we give water to those who are thirsty, food to the hungry, clothes to the naked, where we reach out to our neighbour, where we try to act with gratitude, with grace, with love, with mercy and joy.
Unbeknownst to those around Jesus when this moment happens, he is on his way to the cross. And so, having cleared the temple courts of the economic marketplace that had grown up around it, which was therefore underpinning its existence and making the temple dependent on that whole system, having cleared that all away, Jesus goes to the cross. We know later on in the story, there's that bit about the veil that separated the Holy of Holies, which I talked about earlier on, right? That one place that no one could go except this one person. That veil is ripped. And that's not to let God out. That's to expose its emptiness and to show that God was never there. And so, having cleared out the courts, Jesus also clears out the Holy of Holies and says, this thing has become an idol. This system of religious elitism around which a whole set of economics and buying and selling has grown, and around which some people are becoming wealthy and powerful. All of it is idolatry. God's not there. He's not home. God is everywhere. God is the ground of being, right? As Pete just said there. And all of this is exposed by Jesus at great risk to himself, obviously, and he knew it, which is why he had said to his disciples, I'm going to Jerusalem and it's not going to go well for me. But it has to happen because then we are opened up and exposed to new possibilities, right? We can be freed from that whole religious industrial complex. And then we can take steps towards Micah 4 because we're not trying to serve a system. All that's been driven out, including the Holy of Holies. And then God is found amongst us, between us, when we have our own fig tree, our own vine, and no one makes us afraid. That's the future Jesus invites us into. In a sense, that's heaven, right? That's where we're going. To get there, all of us, as invited by Jesus, need to experience a change of heart.
Create in me a clean heart, O God. Let me be like you in all my ways. Give me your strength, teach me your song. Shelter me in the shadow of your wing. For we are your righteousness. If we die to ourselves and live through your death, we shall be born again to be blessed in your love. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Let me be like you in all my ways. Give me your strength, teach me your song. Shelter me in the shadow of your wing. For we are your righteousness. If we die to ourselves and live through your death, we shall be born again to be blessed in your love. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Let me be like you in all my ways. Give me your strength. Teach me your song. Shelter me in the shadow of your wings. For we are your righteousness. If we die to ourselves and live through your death, we shall be born again to be blessed in your love. We shall be born again to be blessed in your love.
Of course, the temple of God isn't a place built with bricks and stone. The temple of God is you and me. That's where the cleansing now has to happen. That's when the marketplace within ourselves, where we trade ideas and we try to trade off one another to get higher and higher up the pecking order. That's where all that has to be challenged and cleansed. And we invite God to create in us a clean heart, as Psalm 51 says. This, of course, is a labor of love over a lifetime. This isn't a one-off like we read about in John chapter 2. And so this is why we band together in these faith communities called churches, where we hold one another to account and we keep asking ourselves that question: is this leading to Micah 4? Are we getting to that place, that heavenly vision that requires a cleansing of vain ambition, of desires to power, of wanting more than other people? All that has to be cleansed so that we can really engage with God all around us, in us and through us as the ground of our very being. That's all of our destinies. That's what we're all called to. That's how we find life and love in its fullest. And so as we've come to an end, I seem to have run over time. Apologies about that. I want just to remind us as we finish a couple of things coming up. Later today is Corey Mila's Theology in Conversation, which carries on at 5:30 today. And today it's Theology and Economics, as it happens. So we've referred briefly to that today. And Sarah Williamson, I think, is going to be hosting. And she'll have guests Dr. Kevin Hargadin and Kerry Anthony will be with her talking about theology and economics. On Tuesday at 7 o'clock, we'll be having our own follow-up conversation on Zoom. And Brian will be leading a follow-up conversation looking at the same topic, but paying specific attention to our local context here in Northern Ireland. What does it mean to have faith, but also to deal with economic situations? How do we deal with food banks and poverty and wealth and all of that theologically? So you're invited to either or both of those conversations, but you do have to register for them to get access. And the links should be in this YouTube video at the bottom. That all said, thank you all once again for taking the time to be part of this community and helping it stay a community and to keep going. I wish you grace and peace for the week that's coming. Look after one another and stay safe until we meet again.
like a gem on a cold face, lost on the right way. It's all the same, 'cause I've had my hopes raised right in the wrong ways, scared when you felt safe to start again. Now watch me rise up and leave all the ashes you made out of me. When you said that we were wrong, life goes on, just look at how long I've agreed. Now watch me rise up and leave all the ashes you made out of me. When you said that we were wrong, life goes on, you blew me away. Now watch me rise up and leave all the ashes you made out of me. When you said that we were wrong, life goes on, just look at how long I've agreed. Now watch me rise up and leave all the ashes you made out of me. When you said that we were wrong, life goes on, you blew me away. And he is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us, oh, oh, how he loves us, how he loves us all. He is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. Oh, how he loves, yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves heaven meets earth like an old first-seen kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way, oh, how he loves us, oh, how he loves us, how he loves us all.